And you're welcome back. You're watching TV3 New Day. It's now time for Big Issues, where we talk about the big issues that are making headlines in the country. We ask you to participate in this discussion with the hashtag TV3 New Day. You can connect with us on X and all other social media platforms. I'll read your messages as we go. And this is also to say thank you so much for choosing us and for staying with us. Into our discussion this morning. Remember, you can win 1,000 Ghana cedis on the show every day by dialing *439#. *439#. That's the short code if you are on MTN or if you are on Telecel. That's the code to dial to win some cash this morning. We're giving away 3,000 cedis today. That's 1,000 cedis to each person who wins. So dial now, follow the prompt, select option 2 for TV3 and win. It's as simple as that. All right. So dial now and win. This morning, I'm a very happy woman. A lot of women have been happy since Monday night. When we heard that the Affirmative Action Bill, which has been in Parliament for many years now, has finally been passed by unanimous decision by the House of Parliament. Just 2 weeks ago, on this show on Female Factor, we had a very insightful conversation. I had a one-on-one with Madam Sheila Minka-Premo, lawyer and convener of the coalition, the Affirmative Action Bill coalition. She spoke to us about the bill, the journey that it's taken all these years, the various gender ministers who have advocated for it. And she assured us, or she said she believed, that before the end of this administration, the bill will be passed to law. And, you know, we had our hopes and doubts, but this week we have been duly informed that the bill has been passed, awaiting presidential assent. What this bill seeks to do really is to ensure progressive gender parity or equity between now and 2030 in all spheres of our lives: political, educational, economic, cultural, and so on. This morning on the show, I have some very powerful women to discuss the bill, or the act, what it seeks to do, what some of the potential challenges might be, and how we can all ensure that it works for our good as a country. And so I'm happy to announce that joining us live on Zoom is the woman who has been doing a lot of the work, the convener herself. She was here with us 2 weeks ago, and she's joining us this morning live via Zoom. Madam Sheila Minka-Premo. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Ashoko. Thank you very much.
And congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to all those who are involved in pushing for this policy, including yourself, giving it attention on your media. So congratulations to all of us. I think we all deserve it.
Pleasure is ours. And we're happy you are joining us to have this conversation this morning. Also joining us in the house is Madame Rodelyn Imoro Iyana. She is a member of the Alliance for Revolutionary Change, and you can be sure that she would always have some yellow somewhere representing the Alliance. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Great to have you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And finally, a woman I am so happy to see on the show today. She has been an inspiration for a lot of women in media for as long as I can remember, I think since 2008. She's a gender activist. She's currently a member of the communications team for the NDC, director of communications for the Zongo Caucus. We saw her on stage last week speaking to her people in the northern region. She kept saying, "I'm your daughter, I'm your daughter." And she's here with us this morning, more than anything, because she has been a strong gender activist all these years. And since we're talking about the Affirmative Action Bill Act, we can't have that conversation without you.
Yeah.
It's great to have you on the show.
I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
Great job all of you are doing. You
Thank
brighten
you.
our mornings.
Well, we listened to you and watched you brighten our days for so many years.
Yes. And it's exciting times for women in media,
Yes.
actually. The growth we're seeing growth. It's left with the transformation, but we are on a good course, so keep on it. Yeah. Auntie Sheila, good morning.
Good morning, Shamima.
Congratulations. So
To all of us. we're all part of it.
Well
Congratulations
done.
to all of us.
Yes.
And when you said transformation, she immediately referred to her document, which she has brought here to the show this morning, the great transformational plan. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the things that this bill or this act now seeks to do. So the Affirmative Action Bill, which has now been passed by Parliament, here are a few points that we need to note. Government is required to set progressive targets for achievement of gender equity. It establishes a gender equity committee to ensure and monitor compliance with the law. Government is required to ensure progressive gender balance in public office, governance and decision making. And then affected positions include ministerial positions, the Council of State, independent constitutional bodies, security agencies, the judiciary, and Parliament. Political parties are required to ensure progressive achievement of gender equity targets. The Electoral Commission is to ensure that parties comply in respect of positions at national and regional and district levels. And finally, private sector employers are required to ensure progressive achievement of gender equity targets. All right, so this is just a brief summary of some of the key aspects of this act. And one of the aspects that has received a lot of public inquiry or outcry, if you like, is the private sector. Let me start with you, Madam Minka Premo. Beyond its definition, what we know that this act is supposed to do generally, what specific aspects of our lives, outside what we know, politics and the public sector, which we have been, well briefed on, with all the advocacy that you have done all these years on the Affirmative Action Bill, what specific areas in the private sector does this bill seek to, address?
Very much. So, with regard to the private sector, when it comes to employment, this bill is supposed to, be a guide as much as possible. Then, with the private sector, there's also a requirement to have policies, gender policies, to ensure that they address gender issues within that particular area of employment. And then, when it comes to other labor-related issues, there shouldn't be sexual harassment in the workplace. I mean, all these things will be guided by the gender policy that people will put in place. So yes, the private sector is also supposed to comply with this when it comes to engagement of people, when it comes to employment-related policies, etc., etc., etc. Yes.
Okay, I think the question I want to ask is, while we are asking for this, for the private sector to comply, it is desirable, but is it realistic that, someone who has their private organization, they're supposed to comply with this gender parity requirement? Is it realistic as it's desirable?
I think that it is realistic. If there are some organizations that you only see women at the secretarial units.
Yeah.
Okay. And the higher you go, the other managerial positions are mainly men. I know that things are changing because, one of the realities is that for a long time, a lot of women didn't get the right to go to higher levels of education. So you would find them usually in the lower ranks in most employment places. But increasingly, as education opportunities is increasing for women, it is. But now this law is saying that employers should make a conscious effort to address gender balance within their workplace and make sure that workplace policies does not discriminate against women.
Okay.
Yes, so it is possible. I believe that it's possible.
While it is possible, let's talk about the enforcement. So it's possible, yes, and we're all for it. But let's talk about the enforcement. I know that the Act covers some incentives, tax incentives for companies who comply. So there are rewards. But are there punishments for those who do not comply? And how exactly would it be enforced?
When it comes to enforcement, there are two ways in which it can be done. Either you get punished for non-compliance or you get some benefits for compliance. So the way the law is, it looks at more at incentives for the private sector to comply. Because as you said, I mean, the private sector is scattered all over this country, and it will be difficult to, of course, if a particular employee, has a problem, has been discriminated against and reports that there's been some acts of discrimination against that person, then of course the appropriate sanctions, after the investigations have been done, appropriate sanctions will follow. But generally, there are incentives in the law. For instance, they're supposed to get some tax incentives,
tax reliefs,
yes, some tax reliefs, and again, for those who depend on government contracts, etc., there's supposed to be some relief. There's a law called the Exemptions Act, which can guide the judiciary in giving some exemptions to those who really comply. So there are a few things. And then also, those who apply for government contracts, the contracting firms, the construction firms, etc., etc. If one of the things you'll look out for in giving you a contract is how far you are complying.
Okay.
So some of these things would require looking at other legislation like the Procurement Act, a few amendments. One of the things that will be done once this law starts working will be some consequential amendments to some existing legislation.
Okay.
To make sure that we enable this law to work. So there are things in there that are helpful. Yeah. But incidentally, I don't know whether you're aware of this. One of the things that happened when the bill went through Parliament is that the title was changed a little bit.
Yes, from equality to equity.
Yes, it was changed from equality to equity for several reasons, which was given Parliament. So it's very important to bear that, because the idea is that equality is when you've actually reached the parity 50-50. And the way the law is structured,
it's progressive.
If you look at the target, it's progressive. You start from 30 to 40 to 50 when you actually reach the parity. And the way the law is also designed, once you get the balance, then that particular program for that particular sector will have to end.
I'm glad you mentioned this equality, equity thing, because when you listen to discussions on public platforms, one of the things that is said that it is a women's bill, it's for women. Is it correct to say that?
It is not. One of the things, like I said, we work closely with Parliament and doing the winnowing process, doing the work that they put. One of the things they pushed was that we should have to have a good understanding of gender. Gender is both men and women, and the roles society has assigned to them.
Okay.
And yes, the reality is that currently in Ghana, when it comes to issue of marginalization, the imbalance, it is women who are the losing end. Yeah. But the idea, one of the things we're pushing is that as much as possible, this is not a women's empowerment law. It is more of a, pushing us towards gender equity. So as much as possible, we should avoid, one of the things they did was to weed out many of the references to women and said people, because what they did was looked at the language of the Constitution, Article 17.4, which talks about the need to address the imbalance, gender imbalance. If you also look at Article 35, I think 5 and sub 5 and 6, it talks about also addressing the gender imbalance. So in the final draft, which, like I said, they're still doing some fine-tuning before they send it for presidential assent, they weeded out many of the references to women. Because they thought that they have to avoid a situation where we'll get a situation where
eventually we'll need another act for men.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, all right. So they rather use words like people, persons, etc. etc. So the final draft that we'll see, this it's because of compliance with the provisions of the Constitution.
All right.
The idea was to seek to get a balance.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. I needed to ask you these questions to set the tone for our discussion in studio this morning. But please don't leave us. And we're going to continue the discussion in studio. Please don't leave us. We'll be coming to you, yes, every now and again. Yes. This morning is our morning. Shamima.
Yes.
Now, you are a gender activist. You've been doing this for a very long time. Your voice has been very prominent in asking for equity more in all that we do across sectors. Yeah. You've read the bill. What's the most significant, most important clause in the bill for you?
I think that there are lots of, let me just say congratulations again. I was a young graduate at the time that I joined the Domestic Violence Coalition. Auntie Sheila, you remember then, right?
I was
Yes.
a member.
So really, I learned from great women and minds like Auntie Sheila, Nanoye Leithers. At the time, this must have been 2003, 2004, thereabouts, quite a long time ago. And so we have come a long way as a movement. And sometimes when you enjoy some rights, you don't know and you don't appreciate the work that has gone, you know, into fighting for those rights. I mean, rights and it's a contested space, and you must contest the space to claim your rights. It's not just given, and that has been the history and the experience of the women of Ghana. They've had to mobilize, they've had to, you know, advocate, demonstrate, and insist on their basic rights as the Constitution, you know, grants. For me, the entire bill is an acknowledgement and an endorsement, finally, by the people of Ghana, that there are questions to answer and to address where it comes to issues of representation and inclusion in our society. I think that all the clauses are significant, but that recognition at the highest level, Parliament, which is the National Assembly, the national decision-making body, and despite all the challenges we have gone through in pushing through some of the provisions, I think we have come to a reasonable compromise. It's a first good step. And for me, that recognition is what we need now to drive the public education about the whole gender debate, because that was one of the stumbling blocks, the appreciation of gender and the viewing of the bill as some feminist groups who want to come and distort our cultural, you know, setup. But now that we have made the compromises, now that the science, because there's an entire science behind, you know, the calls for inclusion and the calls for increasing women's participation, because historically they have been the sector or the group that have been most underrepresented in all spheres of public life, even though privately and within the informal sector, they are the drivers. Ghana Statistical Service reports show that there are more female-headed households in Ghana than there are male-headed households. And we all have such experiences of the matriarchs in our families who've been the backbone of the families, yes, and have worked, yes, and seen their children through to school. And so many great men today in our society will tell you stories of how industrious their mothers were. So if we witness women in the informal space within our families work so hard to keep the families together. A friend told the story of how their family has disintegrated upon the demise of their grandmother, who was the fulcrum around which the family operated. And she used her status to pull the family together. And now she's gone, and, you know, the family isn't as it used to be. There are so many things that women bring to the society, and the science now backs that. If more women are in public decision-making positions, the quality of our decisions will be different.
And you have very recently yes, publicly shown us that you have fully entered the world of politics, yes, which is probably the biggest public decision-making platform, yes, in the world of politics. So yes, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Now, I had a conversation with Honorable Gifty Chum Ampofu, yes, not too long ago, and she expressed some of her concerns about the troubles that women in politics face. Yes. She said that, look, a woman would put herself up for election, and in addition to the financial and cultural challenges that she will face, after entering the House, yes, her colleagues will just make it impossible for her if she is not submissive, or perhaps she's seen as a woman who doesn't consult with men who, in her words, I think she said, are sometimes, you know, not bringing better solutions than what she's, you know, the woman is preferring. You have just entered politics. Yeah. This bill is seeking to, you know, provide a level playing field for women to be able to comfortably enter the world of politics. Rwanda and South Africa, have done it. We can say they are leaders, Uganda too, in affirmative action and representation of women in parliament. Yeah. But they sort of went a different route. Like, they appoint women, okay? So some women are appointed.
Yes.
Because perhaps one of the problems that we will have is there are women who want to, enter the world of politics or contest, but they face these roadblocks.
Yes.
So the money issues, the cultural issues, the insulting and name calling and bullying, and so they might want to hold back. Do you think that Ghana should go that route, appoint women? Because while we have women who want to do it, they are not coming up for elections, or they are even sometimes not winning when they come up.
Yes. This is the stark reality of the situation we currently have, and you've actually hit the nail right on the head. How we eventually give effect to affirmative action, I think it will be a subject matter of conversations in the coming days. But yes, in some spaces, safe seats are reserved for women. Because organically, if we just say that come and compete organically, we won't increase the numbers. Where we are now in terms of representation totally in Ghana, it's around 14%. And the UN expected minimum is 30%. Yeah. There's an interparliamentary union that has also now issued, I don't know, it's not a threat, but they've issued a statement to member countries that if they fail to attain 30% parity, I think by 2030, they will be reduced from member status to observer status. I was at an event where the former majority leader, H.A. Mensah Bonsu, highlighted the direness of the situation. There are real barriers to participation for women in politics. And one of the things that actually disappointed us was when President Akufo-Addo went to Canada at the Women's Deliver Conference, and when he was asked about the low representation of women in his government, he said that Ghanaian women hadn't shown enough dynamism, and that we needed to show more dynamism and put ourselves up for election through the party structure. Because if you take a political party and you look at the executives, right from the constituency or even wards, some have wards, right from the ward level to constituency to regional to national, in terms of the executives, unless in majority of the strata, you would only find the woman organizer and sometimes a treasurer who is a woman. But for that role, we would have political parties in whole regions with no female representation, even at the local level. Last year, at the district level, elections, the local government elections, we did a campaign to increase women's participation. Yes, you did. What happened? Of the few who participated, about 5,000 as compared to over 17,000 for the assemblies, not even the unit committees. The figures are similar for the unit committees. We currently have only about 4.1% were elected. And this is local governance, where it's supposed to be cheap, where there are supposed to be fewer barriers to entry, where it's local issues. You don't even need to understand English to participate, because it is representing your local issues: sanitation, water, health, educational issues. And women are primarily the users and providers of these services within the communities. So if anybody has anything to say at all about the effective management of our local assemblies, shouldn't it be women? But this is where we are. Many females lost their primaries. So we have a 275-member parliament now with 40 women. 20 for NDC, 20 for NPP. We are most likely not going to hit that target, because quite a number have lost their primaries.
You mean by 2030?
No, for the next parliament. It would be a miracle if we are able to achieve this for the 40%, the 40 women in parliament, if we're able to.
So it looks like the number of women in parliament will actually reduce. For the next parliament.
Yes, because in some constituencies, it is 2 women contesting. So just imagine. In others, they are contesting against male counterparts. They don't have the necessary resources. So there are real issues. What our president needs to do now to show and claim back, some of the grounds he lost with the women's movement is to prioritize the implementation of this new law that has been passed, by quickly assenting to it, gazetting it, and I think that he should situate the implementation, at least the rollout of the implementation at the office of the presidency. I mean, they get allocated a lot of money. 2 billion Ghana cedis was allocated to the office of the presidency. I don't know what they're doing with that money. Let them prioritize the implementation to show commitment, at least in the next couple of months that he has in office. Let him claim back some of the grounds he's lost with the women of Ghana. Let the women also continue to step up, okay, and put themselves up for elections. The numbers going into elections must naturally increase if the outcomes would also increase. But whilst we do that, there are specific interventions that political parties need to relook at. Years ago, when we called on political parties to reduce the filing fees substantially for women, ensure that only women contested in some of their safe seats, so that at least if a woman wins the primary in that constituency, you know that the chances of her coming, you know, into the parliament. Three members of, you know, so if we recognize that we're in a different time now, we're in a different time now.
We have a bill which we hope will soon be accepted. Yes. Rosalind, I see that you brought your great transformational plan, and there are some policy propositions for women in your plan. So this is right up your alley, I suppose.
Oh well, we do have some plans for women, but we want to talk about affirmative action.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Good morning, Ghana. Good morning to Ms. Alan Martin, wherever you are. You know, when we start this conversation, my driver was the first person to say, "Emasem." I said, no, it's not Emasem. It's for everyone. It's not just for women. I think that it's a good thing. Congratulations to our parliamentarians, our women who were able to pass this through. I myself have been through it. I've been to all the seminars, we've been to all the conferences. And as a graduate of the Women in Politics run by Abantu and the Frederick Ebert Foundation, I think I got that interest for feminism from there.
I am a graduate myself.
Good, so you see. So at the end of it, I'm just thinking that we need to have broader consultations, stakeholder consultations right now, if we really want this thing to work, because of our cultural norms and values. It plays a very great role towards getting people to even understand what we are talking about. There's a lot that needs to be done through mindset change, letting people understand that women can equally, you know, do the same jobs that men are doing, if not better. There was a time when you would say that women didn't go to war, they didn't shoot, but they're doing it. Women are flying planes, women are captains of ships and the likes. And the men are also getting into the preserves that were meant for women.
Yes, but in Ghana, yes, that's why I went to war.
Exactly.
So women went to war where we are from.
Yes, women went to war where we are from, but the youth do not even remember those ones. They don't even remember that at one time a president appointed women to parliament, just to make sure that we had representation. Yes, so these are things that are important for us. And when I see progressive, I shudder to think of the progressive.
Why?
Somehow we don't understand progressive. Progressive, how long are we going to be in that progressive status?
Till 2030.
Well, we are hoping that by 2030, we will have people coming up to actually contest and win these elections. Let's not forget the monetization of our body politics. So in getting women to do politics, we need to be able to grow women economically. Those are the things that for us in the Alliance for Revolutionary Change, we believe that we need to grow women economically.
And perhaps in addition to that, we need to demonetize our politics.
We need to demonetize our politics. We need to make it more inclusive also, so that you don't go into politics thinking that it's just the male dominance that is supposed to work. I was lucky to be in leadership in the CPP. I was the second national vice chairperson. Susan was the first national vice chairperson. And Samia Yabankruma was the chairperson. 3 women in a row. And we still had a women's organizer. You understand? And it's always been like that with the CPP. So it's not that we don't understand. There are some parties that do understand. I was highly disappointed when, I think that was just before the 2020 elections, the MPP were asked to at least let the women, you know, who were already holding their seats, not to be contested against. And even if they were to be contested against, it should be fellow women. And the whole thing was no. The men refused. They wanted to contest with the women. You understand? At one time when I was in the UK attending a Labour Party election conference, one of the things that I was made to understand was that when a female holds a Labour position, MP, if you leave, another female contests. And that way you still stick to having more females. But in this country, once you're a female and you are even holding a position, the men are out there trying to get you out. These are the things that, as political leaders, we have to look at. I'm looking at a situation where young people, young women, young men will be encouraged to take active politics as important as they take their church services. Because you see, at the end of it, the politicians are those that make things and unmake things for us. Yeah. If you are getting unemployment, it's because some wrong person is sitting there mismanaging the economy. Some wrong person is sitting there corrupt and doing all the deals. So if you can take politics seriously, like you take your church service, and do it positively, then we will have some changes in this country.
And this is for men and women.
It is for men and women.
We are not saying that women are incorruptible.
No. Of late, we are beginning to see that the women can do even better when it comes to politics.
I see.
You understand? It's for both men and women.
Very few. Very few of them.
So, no, we can't say few.
So
even one is not good.
I want to understand two of the points you made. Are you saying you agree or suggest that, like was done in the past, and it has been done in some African countries, women should be appointed to parliament?
For now.
Women should be appointed to parliament.
Yes.
And for seats that are contested by women, we should perhaps encourage other women to contest
those
and
seats.
Not have men contest those seats with them.
Exactly.
All right. Now, people have, well, some of the people who have issues with the affirmative action bill have raised the question of competence and so on. When they talk about, well, why should we just allow women to do it? Not to say that women are not competent, but to say that if it's a question of competence, why don't you just leave it for men and women to both contest, and whoever is competent should win? What do you say to people who say that? I
don't think that's the right way to go. It's not, you know, when you're talking about competence, we have very competent women in this country. They can also do it, but we are starting on the wrong foot. Already we are disadvantaged.
What's the disadvantage?
The disadvantage is cultural, because you find men not wanting their wives even to go into politics, fathers not wanting their daughters to go into politics, families not wanting their men folks to go into politics, chiefs not allowing. You know, we are already disadvantaged in so many ways. So if we don't do something that would at least help them, we can start off by appointing some. Though, look, we can look at certain seats and say, look, these seats we will appoint women to go in there.
Okay.
And then maybe the rest of them, women are going to contest.
Okay.
And if a woman is already in a particular seat, leave it for the woman or for women to contest. If we do that, it doesn't have to go on forever. At least after a while, we can go back to doing things as they should be done. Everybody can then contest. But for now, we are disadvantaged. And because of that, we cannot say that women should just be left to continuously contest when we are not.
Okay.
It's going to take a while for you to build the capacity of women when it comes to the monies and things for them to contest. So why don't you, at least for a short while, you know, give them the opportunity, appoint some of them, allow those who can contest to contest, and then appoint some of them to bridge the gap. Then we can get the 30%.
All right. Okay. Now, some people have said that this bill is unconstitutional in itself because, you know what? Let's go back to the floor of Parliament and listen to the Honourable Haruna Idrisu, who had some concerns. And then we'll come back to the studio and discuss further.
The provisions of this act by political parties. We are here, members of Parliament. we are all elected by political parties on the ticket of political parties to contest as members of parliament. The law in the constitution, if you are to quote Article 94 or any other right, that confers a right on me to vote and be voted for. How can the Electoral Commission regulate political parties that there should be parity of women? Maybe we should rather come and amend the Constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why I asked the question. Yes. Should we amend the Constitution before proceeding with an affirmative action law for Ghana, or have an affirmative action law that will have trouble sitting with the 1992 Constitution? I dare ask, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, let me narrow to the political parties. Yes, political parties can morally say that in Ashanti, we want to dedicate more seats to women because we likely can project that they can be members of parliament. Another political party can say in Volta region, in Rwanda, in Kenya, is that many of the women are appointed to parliament, not elected. Yes. So if Ghana wants to learn, let's learn well. It is not, you cannot legislate. It's a competitive election. Tamale South, Adaklo is open. Whether male or female, go and run a competitive election and come to parliament. That is what the Constitution provides.
All right, so that was the Honourable Haruna Idris on the floor of Parliament. This was before the Affirmative Action Bill was passed, and he thinks that some of the provisions in the bill could be problematic. He cites Article 94 of the Constitution, which outlines eligibility of people who stand for elections to come to Parliament, become members of Parliament. And he thinks that perhaps we should consider amending the Constitution before considering this bill at all, because some aspects of the bill could be struck down in the Supreme Court. Let me come to you, Sheila. Do you agree with any of the things that he said on the floor of the House? And do we potentially have a problem on our hands?
Okay, thank you very much. So the constitutional argument that he's making, particularly with regard to the provisions on political parties, it's kind of, first of all, I mean, as you said, Article 94 indicates who qualifies and then the criteria to become a member of parliament. It would be difficult for an act of parliament, like a legislation like the Affirmative Action Gender Equity Bill, to have provisions which will override what is in the Constitution. Okay, so if you look at the text of, so these things were considered in the winnowing process. It was agreed that, look, we have to make sure that the language there, until there's a constitutional review to open the doorway for quotas and things like that, this law has to be careful in how the part to do with political parties is couched. So we work around it. You would see that it is more of voluntary compliance. So it's not an imperative. The parties are supposed to try to comply with the targets. So you see the language is very, I call it, it is very flexible. It is, for me, it's a bit too soft. But it is because of these constitutional provisions.
But considering how soft it is, do you think that implementation would be as smooth and quick as 2030, because we want to achieve parity by 2030, because of how flexible, how flexible the language of the bill is? Do you see any challenges in implementation?
Oh, definitely, it's not going to be easy. I mean, it's not going to be easy to get to where we would like to see. Yes. That is, the more women in parliament. It's going to be the way it is couched in that kind of voluntary kind of compliance provisions. It's going to be very difficult. So for me, the other thing I also know is that no law is cast in stone. You can always come and amend. Okay. So for me, I think that the coalition, and that's one of the things I'm going to put to our members when we meet, is the next step is to try to push for constitutional amendments. There are a few constitutional amendments which are already, floating around. We would have to push for some constitutional amendments to this Article 94, etc., to make room for, to address this imbalance in representation, and even to make room for what we call even special seats, because the UN itself, which talks about encouraging gender equality, etc., realizes there's a problem. So if you look at CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW committee, in their interpretation of one of the articles, I think it's Article 7, has indicated that countries can come up with special measures to try to push towards gender equality. And that's what some of the countries you've mentioned have done. So for me, if we are able to adopt some special measures to enable more women to be appointed for a start, and then with time, as people see it, and I always use this example. I think my colleagues at the studio mentioned what happened when we became a republic in 1960, when our very first president pushed for the Representation of the People's Act, which enabled a number of women to be, women contested just among themselves, and it brought 10 women into parliament, into the National Assembly then. You know what happened? After those women had served, the people could see that, contrary to all the cultural views held, women can also be leaders and be good leaders. In the next election, which was in 1965, in Ghana, that is the highest number of women that we saw in parliament. It was 18.5. Since then, we've never achieved that. So for me, if it hadn't been the coup which sort of cuts the trend and the momentum, and the constitution, those provisions have worked for a while, we would have seen more women. Okay? The kind of the military regime kind of stopped things and then whatever. So for me, I think that we do need a constitutional amendment. I'm happy the members of parliament debated this. I was in some of the meetings when they were doing the winnowing, where they considered Article 93 and 94 of the 1992 Constitution and looked at the provisions in the original bill to see whether it would fly. So what was retained is, as I said, that voluntary soft kind of approach until there's a constitutional amendment. So, in a way, he was right in the references he was making about the fact that you can't compel based on the provisions of Article 94. But for me, I think that we should really push for that constitutional amendment. But until that is done, we should work within what was retained. I think it's now Section 20 of the law, where parties are encouraged to comply. It's a big problem. And most of the countries you're talking about, the issue about the quotas and things are even set out in their constitutions. In Rwanda, it's in their constitution, the 30% thing is their constitution. I think Uganda and Kenya and most of those other countries also have it in their constitution. We really don't. There's this general Article 17 for address gender imbalance. 35 talks about public sector, appointments to public sector should be guided by gender, regional and gender considerations, etc. But the political party part is a bit of a problem, and more needs to be done with the constitution. And until that is done, as I said, the voluntary compliance thing should be encouraged. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sheila. Let's talk about public perception, Shemima. I don't know whether you have gauged the atmosphere or, on the ground, what people are saying. When you read some comments on social media, it seems a little divided. I saw some tweets yesterday, I think from men, who seemed to be pushing back, saying that it was not fair. That, well, there's nothing for men. We're constantly, in fact, there has been an outcry, I think, for some time now, that all the empowerment programs are for women. Women empowerment this, women development that, women this, that. There's nothing for men. And there's a concern that we might be growing a generation of young boys and men who are not empowered, because all the programs are geared towards, empowering the women. And there might be the next generation of empowered women with men who are not as empowered. And at that point, we'll have another parity issue, this time with men lagging in the background. Do you feel the same way? Is it a concern that is genuine?
No, I think it's a construct of the misdiagnosis of the project, and a misconception, also largely fueled by the cultural norms. Because if anybody looks on the face of the numbers and the face of who controls global capital, and beyond global capital, even you come to Ghana, who are the controllers of our economy? Who are the big money people? men are not disenfranchised in our society, even though a real appreciation of gender would quickly let you come to the realization that toxic gender narratives affect both men and women equally. And I think that that's the public education we need to put across. Ensuring a certain parity in terms of representation, in terms of opportunity, in terms of safety. Because even the specific issue of safety at work and safety against sexual harassment, the numbers show that it is often disproportionately against women. So the science is what we are dealing with. It has no implication for saying disempowering men, because in terms of the opportunities, the commanding heights of the economy, from politics to wherever, it is men who are in the comfortable lead, naturally. I agree when people say that we shouldn't leave boys out of the conversations on gender, because boys need to also understand ways in which negative stereotyping, negative and gender toxic narratives also disempowers them. So an empowered young man is better and will be a better husband for an empowered young woman. If we are bringing them all into the trainings on issues of gender appreciation, so that we truly come to a point where we know that gender is not only about women. As we are saying, there's no longer in single income households, because men, husbands, wives are all working to bring incomes. So for the quality of the family unit, it is a practical aspiration to have that members of the family are all bringing value. Because when Na brings value, when Na's husband brings value, it is the collective value of the family that would improve. And many forward-thinking couples recognize this. And so when there's a recognition that we are all contributing to a pot, what happens? We all now understand that, so in this family, we don't assign specific duties. We all do what works in the best interest of the family. Everybody. So if that means that Na's husband comes home early and should put dinner together because Na is doing a night shift, that should be okay. That should be okay in that family setting. So look within your own practicalities and ensure that, because men can't carry the burden alone, especially in these hard times, okay? And quickly, just to add to the issue of the fears, we have to take intentional decisions to correct problems in society. When Nkrumah passed the 1960 Women's Bill, it was with deep recognition that women would be at the forefront of Ghana's transformation because of how the women were the backbone of the CPP. Exactly. The Makola women, the market women, so selling whatever they were selling, they were the backbone of the CPP. So by evidence, quickly he recognized that without women's empowerment and their decision-making prowess in those spaces, our progress will not transform. So it is okay. I want to suggest that, yes, there are some practical difficulties in saying that appoint women. You can't appoint women to constituencies because constituencies have to have election. What the parties can gradually do is to get to a situation where they make it easier for women to participate.
How do you make it easier for women to participate?
The money. Money is also one of the major barriers.
So political parties should fund female aspirants.
They can reduce substantially some of the filing fees. They can mobilize resources to support, because they do support some of their candidates during elections. So if you're giving A 100%, you can give B. No, the mindset with which we approach the problem must be, it matters, that we have a problem we are trying to resolve, okay? I think that an easier way out is to do the special arrangement. We have 16 regions, okay? Every region, we know the numbers of women who are in parliament naturally. There are some regions who will not have a female representation per the results of the primaries. There's not going to be any woman in a whole region. A few of those regions, both the MPP and the NDC.
Rodaline, you're saying it's unfair, but
yes,
it's actually,
they do not have female candidates.
It's not that it's unfair. You know, at the moment, anybody is allowed.
Yes.
It's not equitable. Yes. But then anybody is allowed to contest. So for regions where no woman is contesting,
they've contested, they've lost. They didn't win the primaries.
So are there no regions where no woman contested?
There are regions where women all regions women contested.
But none of them won.
Some did not. In some regions, none won.
Of them won. In some regions. So we are saying that for regions that no woman won, and we therefore have only men or male candidates, what should we do?
So that is the problem that we should now resolve, because right now, towards this election, there's nothing we can do. That's the contest.
Yes.
So with this bill, we need to rethink these things, because when we see, a society must reflect to itself and then decide that this doesn't look like a progressive society. What do we do? I think that we should institute another law that mandates the representation. We can make it like the Council of State elections. We have 16 regions. Every region, we would have a woman election to elect a woman to represent that, that region in Parliament in response to the call. So, or if we did that, we would have 16 seats, which are women seats, beyond the traditional 275 constituencies, which will still be open to contest, where women can still contest.
So
in those
in
seats.
Addition to the 275 seats we have, there should be an additional 16
a special
seats
arrangement
for women.
Otherwise,
only.
we will not organically, unless the parties are willing.
What do you think about that?
Sounds good, but I don't think our economy can.
So this is
that.
So we'll have a bigger
but the cost
number
of non-representation is a problem. The cost of non-representation is huge.
It is very huge, and that's how come women are not being represented equally. It's not just a question of reducing filing fees. There's a lot more that goes into being made a member of Parliament. In your constituency, you will need to go around every nook and cranny to ask for votes. It costs money. Transportation alone, feeding, hotel bills, guest house bills, and those who are following you. I tried my hand at Boko Central, and I know what I'm talking about. Because in the morning, all the motorbikes will line up in front of your door, and everyone is taking a gallon of fuel. And you have to give them chop money. Now, it's so expensive that you give up halfway. Now, you try as a woman going out there to seek for funding, and that is another hurdle. We all know those stories.
Sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment. Parties will always sweet talk. We give them, we will support them. When we are talking about supporting, we may be talking about parties that can afford to support. Those are the two dominant parties, but not like a party that may be a CPP party or PNC party. Or my movement is not a political party, so we are not fielding parliamentary candidates. We might support some. But at the end of the day, it is so expensive to do the rounds for you to get elected as a member of Parliament. Even on election day, you are still giving out envelopes. You are still giving out monies. Where is it going to come from? So that is why we are saying that special arrangements must be made in such a way that some people may have to be appointed. If you can get to a traditional area and find that there's a woman who is capable, qualifies under the constitutional requirements, but doesn't have the money or the resources to be able to do it, let us send that person to Parliament. There are some constituencies that can do with that, especially very deprived constituencies.
Yes, but to be a member of Parliament, you must be a representative of the people.
Yeah, so
there's a requirement that they must vote for you, so that you are their choice.
So we have to make some amendments then. For a short while, we need to make some amendments. If we really want to get the 30 to 40%, we will need to make some amendments. Yeah. It may not sound right, but
it is right. Don't say that.
It might sound a bit drastic.
Yeah, it might sound a bit drastic, and that kind of thing.
Progressive is the word some men, not drastic.
Okay. Yes, some men might even say, "Oh, we are asking for Turkeyism." That kind of. But that is not it. We need to do something. If we really want to get women into Parliament, we must appoint some or find some special vehicle to take them.
All right.
It's true.
This conversation cannot, we cannot fully exhaust this conversation
Now, can I just add something quickly?
on this platform this morning.
Just quickly.
But,
just quickly.
okay, quickly.
Yes. Just to also remind us that it is not only in the political sphere or politics that the equity demands are being made. I think, as you read, it's across different other, the private sector,
education,
the public
cultural,
sector, security, judiciary.
Yeah,
but it's because politics it's very,
at the forefront.
It's at the forefront and very
decision-making.
transformational. And we've made some great glass ceilings there. At least Ghana has had the first female Speaker of Parliament under NDC. We've had the first Chief Justice under Kufuor. We've had the first Attorney General Betty Mould under NDC. And today we have a first female running mate on the major party ticket who, all things being equal, God willing, will become the first female president. Yes, of the
Are you going to be her? Oh, you said female vice president.
Yes, of the
you said
Republic.
president. I was going to ask if you were
I'm
going
talking
to
about
be
Professor Nana
her
Jane.
running mate.
We need to reward
next election.
no,
Do you have dreams of going to? I mean,
I have no ambition to be any president of this country.
So perhaps a member of parliament.
Well, that is
a possibility. I wouldn't want you to say no. So that's a possibility.
I'll not run away.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But is it an aspiration? Is it an aspiration of yours?
Not immediately. My focus today and now is to ensure that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the man we trust, the honest leader, the safe pair of hands, together with Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman, will make history, and they will rescue this nation and reset Ghana and put us back on the winning ways.
All right, Shamima.
The hardships are too
unfortunately,
real. They are
unfortunately,
and I know Rodalyn is going to vote
I think
for us.
otherwise. I'm not voting for you.
How do you say
I'm voting for an independent candidate.
No, Alan
that will be all-inclusive, independent, all-inclusive president who will help us.
And angry, rightly so, because I think the New Patriotic Party under the leadership of Nana Baumia have really betrayed a lot of people.
There's no angrier party than NDC who feel that they have
I want
been
to ask you ladies a question. The World Food Security and Nutrition Report 2024 came out, I think, yesterday. And according to the report, Ghana is the second highest or second most expensive country to have a healthy meal in a day in West Africa. Second highest. The first is Mauritania. So according to the report, in Ghana, you need $4.29 per person per day to have a good meal or to eat well in the day. So if it's several meals or one meal, that's about 70 Ghana cedis. In the morning, we had some callers calling who cook at home. And they said they need more than 100 cedis to be able to have, good nutrition in a day. How does that make you feel?
Well,
both of you.
The reality of the matter is that this is where we are. This morning, I was listening to some debates in Parliament, and a government official still insisting that the planting for food and jobs has created abundance of food, and that when he was going to his village, he saw so many tomatoes. Is it so many or so much? So many tomatoes on the street.
Yes.
I went to Northeast region. I saw a lot of watermelons getting rotting and an abandoned watermelon factory that the MPP presidential candidate promised the people of Wale. There is a lot of dissonance in this, in this government. They try to mind game us into believing that whatever we feel, whatever we see, whatever we go to the markets and see is not what is. Because when you look at the general prices of food today, it's just amazing. Tomatoes, we can't buy. There are villages, I was told, there are villages that do no longer cook with tomatoes because they can't afford tomatoes.
Villages, even towns.
In villages
and our homes.
towns, they are not cooking with. Somebody was using watermelon to cook stew.
Yes,
we saw that on
Twitter.
Right. Onions, gari, which was like the get-to. Right now, gari one aloka is 30 Ghana cedis. Sugar. People are not eating sugar again, even though it's healthy. It's not supposed to be. Maize, 1 million Ghana cedis per sack of maize. It is terrible.
1 million.
1,000 Ghana cedis for a sack of maize. Egg, 1 egg, 5 cedis. 1 egg, 5 cedis. So the reality of the rising food prices, and when you don't eat, people are going to bed without even eating food. So don't be insensitive and come on and tell the Ghanaian who is suffering on a daily basis to feed his or her children that there is abundance of food. What is there to be abundant about of food if you can't afford?
Well,
if you can't pay for it,
who are we to blame?
It's quite insensitive.
The two of you have been in government for 32 years. And
No,
don't
do that. Speak to the people who are in power today.
But
the CPP was also in power before. What has happened? And you've not been able to put yourself together.
Right now,
you have a minister for you, Roland.
We have all the things.
We have a minister for
Alan Chamantin.
Yeah, so
when did Alhambra Chamantin become an Nkrumah? The CPP has also disappointed Ghana. Yes, disappointed.
He's not an Nkrumah. That is the more reason why we've made it an inclusive government in waiting. And we intend to transform agriculture. It's not going to be a long wait.
We intend to transform agriculture.
Yes, by having more irrigation projects and giving them more incentives, by giving them financial backing and the rest of it, having agri-parks that will be able to produce all these things, processing, manufacturing. It's not just a question of asking somebody to go and farm rice. We just saw almost, I think last year, there was so much glut of farms having rice without buyers and no processing. So we are not thinking about that. But when we start talking about one village, one dam, one planting for food and jobs, those were just rhetorics because we have not seen anything.
All right. Let me read some messages coming in on both of the conversations we've had. From landlord Bolga D. Line, he says, Ghana is at a crossroad and the agenda to reset Ghana is a national duty. Don't just sit down and continue complaining aloof. Get involved and help build Mother Ghana, all right? Musa Abatwa, texting from Asawasi, says, this is a landmark legislation. It not only affirms our commitments to gender parity, but also aligns perfectly with the 24-hour economic policy aimed at building the capacity of women across the nation. The establishment of Women's Bank under this policy is bold and necessary to provide women with the financial tools that they need to thrive. By equipping women with the needed financial assistance, we're empowering them to contribute their full potential in nation building. All right, we need a holistic approach, he says. Good morning, Na. As the pioneers of the affirmative action bill, and even before its passage, the NDC John Mahama is already showing the way as he pushes for a woman vice president of this country, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. The ball is now in the court of Ghanaian women to help make Nana the first female vice president in the upcoming elections by voting for the NDC. All right, thank you for sending that message in. Okay, more messages coming in. Now, this morning has been just about education and no needless shouting and arguments. I'm glad I watched you this one. There's never needless shouting and arguments. We debate the issues, which I believe is also very important in you know, providing solutions to some of the problems that we have. I'm going to say a very big thank you to all my ladies for joining us on the show today. Mrs. Sheila Minka Premo, lawyer convener of the Affirmative Action Coalition. Thank you so much, Sheila, for joining us this morning. It's been great having you, for bringing us some insights into the bill and how we intend to make sure that it's implemented to all of our benefits, men and women alike. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity as well.
All right. We'd also like to, special thanks to Shamima Muslim. Our Shamima Muslim for joining us this morning.
My Zongo Caucus members, yesterday we were at the Council of Zongo Chiefs, and today we're going to Medina to visit the Zongo Chiefs in Medina and Ashama, and we've been to visit all the Muslim stakeholders. So please, please, who vote Kuba JM? Who vote Kuba JM?
Do you also want
yes,
to?
I would want to say that this is an opportunity for Ghanaians to completely take a drastic change and vote for the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. It's time for all inclusivity in our governance structure.
Kuvo's Kuba Alliance.
Kuba Alliance Remating. The first independent candidate.
Well, I look forward to seeing both of you in Parliament and both of you continuing to push the female leadership agenda. This has been Big Issues on TV3 New Day. Step into the world of Dewa 539 for your chance to win big with Dewa Direct and Dewa Chop Money. With Dewa Direct, dial *446# and pick any number between 1 and 39 and win 20 times, 40 times, or even 400 times your stake and win cash every evening at 7 p.m. and on Sundays at 6 p.m. Early birds love Dewa Chop Money at 10 a.m. Dial star 446 hash. Choose any number between 1 and 39 and win 20 times, 40 times, or 400 times your stake. Play at dewa-nla.com or dial star 446 hash. If you need any help at all, you can call 055-625-9249 or 0532-479879. Dewa Afa. Stay tuned, you're watching TV3 New Day. Today also, we will bring you Community Manifesto, where we come to your communities to discuss with you the issues on the ground from your perspective. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the world of casino games on 1xBet. Discover the wide variety of exciting slot games for every taste. Take your chances and let the luck be on your side. Slot games on 1xBet, where fortune awaits.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana. Bet responsibly, not for persons below 18 years. Gambling can be addictive.